Week 5, this is Professor Rothman for CS 107. This week we'll be focused on building apps with variables. Our agenda, or the agenda for this video, what we'll be covering, we'll do a review of variables. I'll preview the score tracker app, the countdown app. Importantly, there is no homework this week, week 5. Corny joke of the week: what do you call an elephant that doesn't matter? That's right. It's an irrelevant. Yeah. Alrighty. Office hours this week, same as always. I'm available Thursdays from 5 to 7 and by appointment. You catch Section 1 and Section 2 TAs Monday and Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. If you need help with apps, or you find that some of the coding practice is challenging, a suggestion would be think of your office hours as your synchronous class. You can show up at those office hours, keep your camera off, mute, and work through. But if you actually needed any help, you would have someone to be able to give you live support. So a suggestion that may work for you. Piazza's up and going. We get a couple questions a week, which is really useful. I'll try to get back to those as quickly as possible. I'm online most of the day, for better or for worse, and I'm checking for notifications every so often. So it's a good way to communicate. I will acknowledge that it is not a really clean looking interface, and I can imagine the discussion board week to week on Canvas being better. We use Piazza for one very specific reason, and that is you have the ability to post your questions anonymously. And given that this is like an introductory level computer science class, you really need to feel comfortable asking basic level questions. And if asking anonymously is something that's going to help you do that, I want you to be able to do that. So while I acknowledge that Canvas discussion is a much cleaner interface, Piazza has one very important user function that's really useful, the ability to post anonymously, and that's why we use Piazza. All right, a couple items of feedback from week 4. People were figuring out the logic tab, where you start to be able to do more complicated apps by comparing answers, and based on that, those are conditions by which you can program decisions into your programs. People figuring out how to modify the if-else blocks, and then some practice with variables, and someone acknowledged that I'm glad the traffic light activity was useful. It's a basic way of applying the idea of if-else and if-else. Okay, some wishes that came up. Thunkable was glitching. I apologize for that. That is totally possible. I myself find myself having to log out and refresh and use a bunch of other workarounds to get Thunkable to work well. I think what's cool about Thunkable is that, given that we're in this distance learning environment, it's mostly functional and you can use it at home. But yes, there are glitches, so I will acknowledge that. I think I posted a link which was a little funky, so someone gave me feedback on that, and I hope I changed it in time for most people, but acknowledge that there was a funky link. And once again, the Piazza interface is mediocre. That is for sure. And we use it very specifically because you can post anonymously. But yes, the Canvas interface is better. Noted that people have expressed that they really like the tutorials, so I made sure that there were tutorials built into the conditional apps and the variable apps. Someone noted last week, I thought it was a really good piece of feedback to make sure to use to add an example plan for the app. So you will be doing some creative apps, and I didn't have an example up for the creative soundboard, but luckily people were able to make it through. There's a kind of a thing in computer science and where your logic may be correct, and sometimes you're using a platform that is limited for one reason or another. So someone was using code.org, and they figured out a solution that was logical, but it may or may not have been accepted by the program, and that is a reality in computer science. So your logic may be correct, and sometimes you're using a program that has some sort of secret handshake. So that is something you'll run into, and thank you for working through it. The last 3 puzzles of this, I guess, from a week and a half ago. Again, the suggestion is if you find the coding challenging, or you're running into challenges, think of the office hours as synchronous class. You don't have to interact, but if you did it during those period of time, you would be able to get immediate feedback. So that's some support we can offer. Some general thoughts were someone was using Thunkable, and it said that you're limited to 10 projects. Will you be deleting old apps? No, I don't want you to delete old apps. Yes, Thunkable may have some funky little things going on it. At worst, you'll just create another account with another email, but please, yeah, you will not need to delete apps. For section 1, there's some extra assignments up there. I haven't figured out how to hide them. They are not due. So some notes for this week. One thing I had you do last week was a review of the concept of conditionals. So I posted some code that I wanted you to think about. The 2 questions are: what happens when the change color button is clicked, and what and why? Why does that happen? So here was the code that I posted, and there were 2. I gave credit for all answers, but there were 2 very specific answers that I thought were the most correct. So if we're taking a look, answer number 1 might have been nothing. Nothing's going to happen because on the basis that we don't know what the background color was to begin with. So for example, if we look at this code and had the background color been blue, the conditionals are checking for, conditionals are very specifically checking for green, yellow, and red. So if the background had been blue, nothing would have happened. So if your answer was that nothing's going to happen on the basis that we don't know the background color, it might be black or white or blue or any color that we're not checking for, that would have been a correct answer. So 1 correct answer is nothing because on the basis that we don't know the background color. Here's a second answer that you might have added, which is, again, nothing. And that is because, and this is actually the answer that I was trying to get to, which is that if you think about this code, no matter what, so assuming that the background color was already green, yellow, or red, if the background color is green, yellow, red, your first click, it's always going to go back to green. So follow me on this. If the background color is green, it's checking to see if it's green and immediately changes the background color to yellow. But then look at this code, right? So there's 3 if statements here, and they're going to run in sequence. So the first thing is checking to see if it's green, it'll turn it to yellow, but then it's yellow. So then it's checking to see if it's yellow, it'll turn to red. And then the third condition is going to run where it's checking for red, and then it's going to turn it to green. And so all of the if statements, all the conditions are being checked for. They're being checked for in sequence. And so if you had started on any of those 3 colors, you automatically are going to end up on green. And if it starts on green, you're not going to see anything. So the answer for either answer, both of the answers essentially are nothing is going to change on the screen. And that is because all the conditions will be run, and if it's at any point green, it's always going to go back to green, and you will not see any change on the screen. So the answer is nothing is going to happen in that code, and it's because all of the conditions are going to be checked for, and if it at any point is green, it's going to end on green. And that is why we need the else ifs in our code if we're checking for more than 1 condition. So yeah, long answer, but the answer is nothing happens in that code, and that's why you need the else ifs, which you guys figured out in the traffic light challenge. All right, quick review of the concept of variables. So the variable, where it's an information that can change, so we're storing a piece of information, we can change it. So you have to always initialize your variable, give it a name in the name area. Something that we didn't cover, I will cover right now, is that so naming conventions. So things about variables and naming them, they should always be 1 word. And you can separate multiple words within 1 word, either with an underscore, or you can use camel case, which I'll show you in a second. And you would never start with a digit. So those are 2 things to remember about variable naming. This is an example right here of camel case. And the reason why it's called camel case is because the first letter in a variable, the first word of a variable, should always be lowercase. And then you differentiate the other words by having the rest of the words be uppercase. So you're always condensing your variable names down to 1 word, even if there's multiple words. So there's never a space, but you might smash the words together, and then the second, any word beyond the first one would have uppercase, so it kind of looks like a camel with the humps, or again, you could just use underscore, but always 1 word and never start with a digit. Okay, so again, it's how we name them. You can find, you can use the value of the variable with this block, the app. In this case, the variable score, so you can use the app score, but that's the value of the variable being used. You can set it to set the variable to a new value. We use the set block. Here's a basic example I showed you guys last week. So we've initialized this variable dot size to the value of 10, and when the plus button is clicked, every time you're taking the current value, which is the get block, and you're adding 5. So the first time you click it, it would be worth 15, 20, 25,